Something reaches you before the silence does. Not sound, not movement. An absence. A dry desert breath slips through broken windows, dragging dust across stone walls that have not felt a human touch in over a century. It doesn't rush. It lingers, moving from room to room, through spaces where voices once filled the air. A doorway stands without a door. A staircase climbs toward nothing. Glass bottles pressed into cement long ago still catch the light, as if someone might return for them. But no one is coming. The silence here doesn't feel empty. It feels interrupted, like a sentence cut short, like a town that believed it had more time. If you stand still long enough, you can almost imagine it. Footsteps on wooden boardwalks, coins sliding across a saloon counter, a train whistle slicing through the morning. And then, nothing. The desert kept the buildings, but it erased the voices. Once this place had electric lights, telephones, banks built of brick and stone designed to outlast the century. People said it would rival the greatest mining cities in Nevada. Now only the shells remain. Concrete rising from dust, a 3-story bank without a roof. A house made from 50,000 empty bottles, still standing, stubborn against the sun. It doesn't look destroyed. It looks paused, as if the builder stepped away for lunch and never came back. This is not just a ghost town. It is a promise that burned too brightly, a city that trusted in gold, a place that grew too fast to fail and failed anyway. 4 miles west of Beatty, in the Nevada desert, the wind moves through the ruins of a town called Rhyolite, and it still has something to say. The desert did not look special in the summer of 1904. Just rock, heat, distance, the kind of land most men crossed quickly and forgot. But 2 prospectors did not forget. Frank Shorty, Harris and Ed Cross were moving through the Bullfrog Hills that year, tired, sunburned, chasing something they had chased before and lost before. They were not searching for beauty. They were searching for a vein. And then they found it. High-grade gold locked inside pale volcanic rock. Rhyolite, ore so rich that early samples ran into the hundreds of dollars per ton. Not dust, not traces. Real money buried in stone. Word traveled the way it always did in mining country. Faster than horses, faster than caution. By late 1904, men were pouring into the hills. Picks, shovels, tents, staking claims under a sky that did not care who succeeded. There was no town yet. Just canvas, just ambition. But in early 1905, something changed. This was no longer a scattered camp. Land companies stepped in. Surveyors marked lines in the dirt. In February 1905, lots were platted and sold. Some even offered free to merchants willing to build fast. They gave the place a name taken from the rock itself, Rhyolite, and from that moment, it moved at an unnatural speed. By May 5, 1905, the Rhyolite Herald printed its first issue, a newspaper in the middle of nowhere. A post office opened, at first inside a tent. Retired U.S. Senator William M. Stewart arrived and opened a law office, as if this place were already permanent. Think about that, a senator, in a town that barely existed months before. By late 1905, about 1,500 people were living there, not scattered prospectors, families, merchants, speculators, optimists. Every week more arrived. Investors incorporated more than 80 mining companies during the boom. Stock certificates changed hands as quickly as saloon drinks. In March 1907, a mining stock exchange opened. 60,000 shares traded on the first day alone. Money was not just being made, it was being imagined. The Montgomery-Shoshone mine, started by Bob Montgomery, in early 1905 became the beating heart of the district. It was the largest producer. By early 1908, its 200-ton mill was crushing ore day and night. The Rhyolite Herald would later estimate nearly $1 million in gold production in 1908 alone. Across the Bullfrog district, roughly $1.69 million in ore came out between 1907 and 1910. These were not small numbers for a town that had not existed 3 years earlier. And so they built as if nothing could stop them. 3 water companies competed in the desert. 3 ice plants. Electric streetlights were installed by 1907, glowing against the dark Nevada sky. Telephones rang. Telegraph lines clicked. Railroad tracks stretched toward the horizon. The Las Vegas and Tonopah Railroad arrived in December 1906. The Bullfrog and Goldfield line followed in June 1907. then the Tonopah and Tidewater in October 1907. 3 railroads. For a town barely 2 years old, freight trains hauled in heavy machinery, lumber, steel. Passenger trains brought investors in pressed suits and families, carrying trunks full of hope. By June 1908, a grand concrete depot stood ready to welcome them. The isolation was gone. Rhyolite was connected, and connection meant confidence. Banks rose from the dust. 3 of them. Nevada, California Bank, Jonas Cook & Co., a stock brokerage floor where men studied numbers like sacred scripture. The Cook Bank building, 3 stories of sandstone and brick, completed in early 1908, cost about $60,000. Solid, permanent. A declaration in stone that this was no temporary camp. Beside it, the Overbury building, a 3-story concrete block structure costing $50,000, joined the skyline. Concrete jail, steel-reinforced schoolhouse, an opera house, tennis courts, baseball teams, fraternal lodges. Wood was scarce and expensive, more than $100 per 1,000 board feet. So they built in brick, concrete, steel. They built like a city that intended to outlive the desert. And in 1906, miner Tom Kelly solved the lumber problem his own way. He gathered discarded bottles, 30,000, maybe 50,000, and set them into cement. Green, brown, clear, stacked into walls that still shimmer today. A house made from what others threw away. The town pulsed. By 1907, some claimed 12,000 people lived there. That number was almost certainly inflated. More, careful estimates suggest somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 at its peak. Even the higher scholarly estimates, in 5,000 to 8,000, tell the same story. It was enormous for a place that had been empty just 3 years earlier. Hotels offered hot baths. Restaurants served travelers stepping off trains. An orchestra played. Doctors and dentists opened offices. 2 churches, Catholic and Protestant, filled with worshipers praying for prosperity. Saloons lined the alleys. One account counted 50 by 1907. 50. In a town younger than most of the men drinking inside them. Water cost $2 to $5 per barrel by freight. Food was expensive. Everything had to be hauled in. But money was flowing. And when money flows, prices don't matter. Even the panic of 1907, when financial markets trembled across the country, did not immediately break. Rhyolite. Local boosters blamed Eastern financiers. Property values held. Production continued. The great days, it seemed, were only beginning. By 1908, the streets were graded. Streetlights glowed. Newspapers competed for headlines. The school enrollment surged so quickly that a larger, $20,000 concrete school was completed in 1909. After the height of the boom, built for a future that already felt guaranteed. Everything about Rhyolite suggested inevitability. Not just a mining camp, a city, a permanent fixture in Nevada's story. In less than 4 years, it had leapt from silence to symphony. And standing there in 1908, watching trains arrive, watching brick buildings rise against the desert, watching stock prices flicker across a trading board, you would have believed it too. You would have thought, this is only the beginning. By 1907, the rush had settled into something that felt almost ordinary. Not quiet, never quiet, but structured. Morning came early in Rhyolite. Before the sun cleared the Bullfrog Hills, miners were already moving. Boots against packed dirt. Coffee poured fast. Ore carts creaking toward the Montgomery-Shoshone. The mill thundered day and night. 200 tons of ore crushed daily by early 1908. Men disappearing underground before sunrise, and emerging hours later coated in dust the color of money. But Rhyolite was not only miners. It was wives opening windows to shake desert sand from linens. Children walking toward the schoolhouse. First, the small, 18 by 30-foot building finished by 1906, and later, the grander 2-story concrete school completed in 1909, built with steel reinforcement and $20,000 worth of belief. Enrollment had grown so quickly they assumed it would keep growing forever. Teachers taught arithmetic and penmanship under a sky that still smelled faintly of blasting powder. On Golden Street, merchants unlocked their doors. The Porter brothers, and who had started in a tent, now operated a large masonry store with a freight elevator and an inventory once valued near $100,000. Shelves stacked with canned goods hauled in by rail. Boots, fabric, tools. Everything had traveled across miles of desert to be here. 3 banks opened their heavy doors each morning. Nevada, California Bank, Jonas Cook & Co., the First National Bank. Inside the Cook Bank building, that 3-story monument of sandstone and brick completed in 1908, money changed hands under high ceilings designed to inspire confidence. Confidence was as valuable as gold. Telephones rang. Telegraph operators tapped out messages to Tonopah, to Goldfield, to the wider world. Electric streetlights, installed by 1907, flickered off at dawn. Proof that this was not some primitive outpost. This was modern. There were 3 water companies, competing for customers in the driest landscape imaginable. 3 ice plants manufacturing cold in the desert heat. A hospital. 2 doctors, dentists, both Catholic and Protestant churches holding services on Sundays. And at night, Rhyolite glowed, the opera house filled with applause. Traveling performers stepped onto stages framed in electric light. Fraternal lodges held meetings heavy with handshakes and ritual. Baseball teams played under a sky so clear it felt infinite. Tennis courts echoed with laughter. An orchestra played music that drifted into warm evening air. And the saloons. Some said there were 50 by 1907. Doors swinging open and shut. Cards slapped against tables. Stock tips whispered over whiskey. Laughter loud enough to outrun doubt. The mining stock exchange, opened in March 1907, buzzed with speculation. 60,000 shares traded on its first day. Men stared at chalkboards as if staring into the future. Fortunes made in hours, lost in minutes. Made again. 4 newspapers competed for attention. The Rhyolite Herald, the Bullfrog Miner, the Beatty Bullfrog Miner, and later the Rhyolite Daily Bulletin. Each one telling residents they lived in the fastest growing, most promising camp in Nevada. Perhaps in the West, some even claimed the population reached 12,000. That number was almost certainly inflated. More grounded estimates suggest between 3,000 and 6,000 at its peak. But in spirit, it felt limitless. Hotels advertised hot baths. Railroad depots welcomed new arrivals daily. By June 1908, the Las Vegas and Tonopah depots stood in solid concrete and a declaration that Rhyolite was connected, important, permanent. Freight trains brought in machinery heavy enough to reshape mountains. Passenger trains brought investors in tailored suits who stepped onto platforms already convinced they had arrived at destiny. Food was expensive. Water cost $2 to $5 per barrel by freight, but no one complained loudly, because everyone believed tomorrow's ore would cover today's cost. And beneath it all, beneath the music, beneath the electric light, beneath the brick and stone, there was faith. Faith that the Montgomery-Shoshone would keep producing. Faith that the 80+ incorporated mining companies would justify their paper promises. Faith that the richest oxidized ore was only the beginning. Parents spoke about the future in practical terms. More houses, more schools, more rail lines, permanent foundations. The concrete jail built in 1907 stood ready to enforce order. The steel-reinforced schoolhouse of 1909 stood ready for generations. The Overbury building rose 3 stories high in 1908, costing $50,000. Another monument to durability. They built as if permanence could be engineered. And perhaps that was the most human part of Rhyolite. Not the gold, not the speculation, but the certainty. Standing there in 1908, watching electric lights flicker against desert darkness, listening to a train whistle echo off the hills, hearing children recite lessons in a classroom still smelling of fresh concrete, you would not have felt like you were inside a temporary boomtown. You would have felt like you were inside a beginning. And that belief, that steady, confident belief, was stronger than the desert itself. For a moment, it truly seemed unstoppable. At first, nothing obvious broke. No explosion. No single day where the whistles stopped and the lights went dark. Rhyolite did not collapse loudly. It began with quieter things. Numbers changing on paper. Investors asking more questions than before. Shipments of machinery that never arrived. The town had survived fear once already. When the San Francisco earthquake struck in 1906, when the panic of 1907 rattled financial markets across the country, Rhyolite kept building. Boosters insisted the panic was manipulation by Eastern financiers. Production held. Property values stood firm. Confidence did not crack overnight. But by late 1908, the foundations were shifting in ways brick could not fix. The richest ore, the oxidized gold that had made early assays so dazzling it was thinning. What remained lay deeper, locked in sulfide ore that required expensive processing. More capital, more machinery, more patience. And patience is difficult in a town built on speed. Mining companies had multiplied too fast. More than 80 incorporated during the boom. Many existed more on paper than underground. Stock promotions, inflated claims, speculative trading. Confidence had been stretched thin long before the ore began to run low. Now investors grew cautious. Money slowed. And when money slows in a boomtown, everything else follows. By late 1909, 2 of Rhyolite's 3 banks had failed. Vaults that once symbolized permanence now symbolized overreach. Depositors lined up not to invest, but to withdraw what remained. The mining stock exchange, on once roaring with 60,000 shares traded in a day, no longer felt like the center of the future. It felt nervous. Newspapers began folding one by one. The Rhyolite Daily Bulletin printed its final issue in May 1909. The Bullfrog Miner followed in September. Printing presses went silent. Ink dried in trays. Headlines stopped promising tomorrow. And people noticed. Tax records from late 1909 revealed something the streets were already beginning to show. 28% of property owners had abandoned their holdings. Just left, allowing the county to seize the land. By 1910, that number rose to 44%. Nearly half the town's owners gone. Boardwalks that once echoed with boots now held long stretches of uninterrupted dust. Hotel rooms emptied. Storefront windows gathered a film of desert grit. The First National Bank closed in 1910. Another pillar gone. The Rhyolite Herald struggled on, thinner editions, smaller circulation, its readership vanishing alongside the miners it wrote for. And still, the town tried to believe it could recover. Leaders spoke of temporary setbacks, of deeper veins waiting to be unlocked, of new investment just over the horizon. But the horizon stayed empty. In May 1911, the moment came that many would later call inevitable. The Montgomery-Shoshone mill shut down permanently. That single operation had been the district's largest producer. Its heartbeat had powered the entire illusion of endurance. When it stopped, the sound carried. Industry journals reported the truth bluntly. The Bullfrog district is almost deserted. The Montgomery-Shoshone has closed, having exhausted its pay ore. Exhausted. A word no Boomtown ever wants to hear. By then, roughly 40 to 43% of Rhyolite's properties stood vacant. Shuttered, silent, unclaimed. Rail traffic slowed. Freight shipments declined. Passenger arrivals thinned. Confidence in that invisible currency had drained faster than gold ever had. With capital gone, services began collapsing in sequence. In 1912, the Rhyolite Herald printed its final issue, the last voice of the town. Fell quiet. Railroads started retreating. In 1914, the Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad removed its track above Rhyolite. Steel rails pulled from the earth the same way fortunes had once been pulled from ore. By 1916, the power company cut electricity entirely. Streetlights went dark. Poles were dismantled and salvaged. The glow that once made Rhyolite feel modern vanished. A California newspaper wrote that December with a kind of distant sadness. Rhyolite, once a camp claiming several thousand population, is practically a deserted village. The movable buildings have been moved away, not destroyed. Moved. Houses dismantled and hauled to other towns. Lumber reused where hope still existed. Even structures abandoned the place. Miners relocated. To Tonopah, to Goldfield, to Las Vegas. Others drifted back to California. Some stayed briefly on small leases, caretakers of a dream already gone. Important figures left too. Ed Cross, one of the original discoverers, had sold out as early as 1906 and moved on. Shorty Harris kept prospecting elsewhere, chasing new horizons like the one that had built and broken this town. By the end of the 1910s, Rhyolite was no longer collapsing. It was emptying, not in panic, not in chaos, but in stages. A bank closing, a newspaper ending, a railroad withdrawing, a light going dark, until the silence that had existed before 1904 began returning. Slowly, patiently, as if the desert had never truly given the land away. By the time the end came, it did not feel like an ending. There was no final announcement. No last train packed with waving passengers. No ceremony marking the moment a city became memory. Rhyolite simply thinned out, one family at a time, one business at a time, one locked door that never opened again. After the Montgomery-Shoshone shut down in 1911, the rhythm of the town never recovered. Men who once woke before dawn now had nowhere to go. Ore carts stood idle. Mill machinery, once deafening, rested in a silence that felt unnatural. Some miners tried to hold on. Small leases, hoped that deeper veins might still turn generous. But the richest ore had already been taken. What remained demanded money no one was willing to risk anymore, so they left, not all at once. Quiet departures, wagons loaded lightly, tools packed carefully. Tools could still be useful somewhere else. Children told they were moving for better opportunities. Though the adults rarely met each other's eyes when they said it, houses began to empty. Curtains removed. Furniture sold or hauled away. Wooden structures dismantled board by board and transported to towns that still had a future. Even buildings were migrating. Boardwalks warped under sun exposure with no footsteps to justify their repair. Store signs faded. Glass cracked under years of heat and cold. The concrete buildings stayed, too heavy to move, too expensive to demolish. The Cook Bank building still stood, its sandstone and brick walls defiant but hollow, vaults empty, counters coated in dust thick enough to soften sound. The Overbury building, once a proud 3-story block, looked outward through window frames stripped of glass. Wind passing freely where clerks once counted money. The jail, built of concrete in 1907, remained, but had no one left to hold. The schoolhouse, that steel-reinforced monument completed in 1909 for a future that never came, stood largely unused. Classrooms built for generations echoed with absence instead of recitation. Even faith receded. Church gatherings grew smaller, then stopped. Doctors relocated. Dentists followed their patients out of town. The hospital closed its doors. Electricity had already been cut in 1916. Without power, nights returned to pre-boom darkness. No streetlights, no glowing windows, only starlight and wind. Railroads that had once delivered prosperity now bypassed the silence. Tracks removed, depots abandoned, platforms left facing empty desert. By 1920, Rhyolite was effectively finished as a living town. A few figures lingered into the 1920s. Caretakers, leaseholders, men unwilling to let go of a place that had once promised them everything. But they were not a community. They were witnesses. Witnesses to a city dissolving not through violence, but through forgetting. Doors swung in the wind. Paper scraps moved through alleys like drifting leaves. Water cistern foundations sat dry under the sun. And there were things left behind. Not because they were worthless, but because taking them meant admitting finality. Broken chairs, bottles, ledgers, machinery too heavy to justify the effort. Tom Kelly's bottle. House remained, now walls made of 30 to 50,000 glass, bottles still catching light long after the people who built it had gone. An accidental monument to improvisation and survival. The Opera House, and once filled with applause, stood until fire claimed it in 1932, long after the audience had vanished. But most structures did not burn. They stayed. That is what makes Rhyolite different from towns destroyed by disaster. It was not erased. It was left behind. A place paused mid-motion, as if everyone agreed to step away at the same time and never return. And in that abandonment, something heavier settled over the streets. Not tragedy, not shock, but the weight of unrealized permanence. Buildings designed to last generations, serving only a handful of years. Foundations poured for children who never grew up there. Bank vaults built for wealth that evaporated faster than desert rain. By the early 1920s, the wind had reclaimed the soundscape completely. No trains, no markets, no laughter spilling from saloon doors. Just the slow erosion of a dream that had once believed itself untouchable. Rhyolite was not dead in the way cities die. It was paused forever at the moment belief ran out. The desert did not bury Rhyolite. It preserved it. That is the first thing you notice when you arrive today. How much is still here? Not whole, not alive, but standing in fragments that feel deliberate. The road in is quiet. Highway 374, stretching through sun-bleached emptiness toward the edge of Death Valley. Tourists pass it every day without realizing what waits just off the asphalt. Then the ruins appear. Not suddenly, but gradually. Concrete shapes rising from sand like bones surfacing through skin. The Cook Bank building is the first to command silence. 3 stories of sandstone and brick, still standing without a roof. Window frames empty. Staircases exposed to sky. It was built in 1908 to symbolize permanence. $60,000. worth of confidence poured into its walls. Now it stands as the opposite, one of the most photographed ruins in the American West, not because it is grand, but because it endured when the belief behind it did not. Walk a little farther and the bottle house catches the light. 30 to 50,000 glass bottles set into cement by Tom Kelly in 1906 and 1907. Green, amber, clear. They glow when the sun hits them, as if the house still holds warmth inside its walls. It survives in remarkable condition. Caretakers protect it, repair it, guard it against vandalism. It was built from scarcity, and outlasted structures built from wealth. Elsewhere, foundations mark where water companies once competed in the driest land imaginable. Stone outlines of cisterns, concrete pads where power plants once hummed before electricity was cut in, 1916 and the poles salvaged. Railroad traces remain too. Concrete platforms where passengers once stepped down in pressed suits. The Las Vegas and Tonopah Depot, the Tonopah and Tidewater Station, now reduced to foundations facing empty horizon. The tracks that once connected Rhyolite to the world were removed long ago. What remains is stillness. The Overbury building's concrete shell, the roofless jail built in 1907, fragments of commercial blocks where hotels and stores once stood shoulder to shoulder, and the schoolhouse. 2 stories, steel reinforced, completed in 1909, just as the boom was already fading. Built for generations that never arrived. It stands today as one of the last civic structures, its classrooms forever waiting. Walking through Rhyolite now feels less like visiting ruins and more like interrupting something. The silence is thick but not empty. Interpretive signs explain what stood where. The Bureau of Land Management manages the site today, preserving it as a historic district since the late 20th century. Visitors can walk freely among the remains, day use only, guided not by fences, but by respect. Because this place is fragile, concrete cracks, brick loosens, glass breaks if touched carelessly. Time is still working here, just slowly, and yet people keep coming. Photographers arrive at sunrise when shadows stretch longest across the bank facade. History enthusiasts walk the streets mapping structures against archival photographs. Travelers stop on their way into Death Valley. Drawn by curiosity they cannot quite explain, Rhyolite has become an icon, often called Nevada's most photographed ghost town, a visual shorthand for Boomtown ambition and collapse. Its image appears in films, documentaries, photography books, always framed against desert vastness that makes its rise feel even more improbable. But history is not the only thing that draws visitors. Just beyond the ruins, figures stand in the open desert, life-sized, human, but not alive. The Goldwell Open Air Museum sits adjacent to the town, a private outdoor sculpture installation. Its most famous piece, the Ghost Rider, places a spectral figure on horseback facing the ruins. Nearby, the Last Supper figures stand in silent formation, draped in white against the Nevada sun. Modern art, placed beside historical abandonment. Some visitors find it haunting, others find it beautiful. Either way, it pulls the past and present into the same frame. Rhyolite, once built on speculation, now survives on reflection. Tourism guides recommend it as a roadside stop. Rallies and historical tours pass through. Caretakers maintain what they can, stabilizing walls, protecting the bottle house, preventing vandalism from erasing what time has not. But preservation has limits. No one is rebuilding Rhyolite. No one is restoring it to function. The goal is not revival. It is remembrance. So the ruins remain as they are, incomplete, weathered, exposed, and allowing visitors to see both what was built and what was lost. And standing there today, with wind moving through roofless buildings and sunlight pouring through empty windows, it does not feel like you are visiting history. It feels like you are inside a pause moment, a town that reached for permanence and became permanent only as a memory. If you stand in Rhyolite long enough, something changes. At first you see ruins, stone, concrete, glass set into walls. You take photographs. You read the signs. You imagine the noise that used to live here. But if you stay, if you let the silence settle, the town stops feeling like a place and starts feeling like a question. Because nothing here was built to disappear. The bank was designed to outlast generations. 3 stories of sandstone and brick, a monument to financial permanence and now open to the sky. The schoolhouse was built for children who would grow, graduate, marry, and raise families here. Instead, its classrooms never filled the way they were meant to. Railroads carved through desert rock to reach this place. Investors funded water systems, ice plants, electric grids, modern infrastructure, and one of the harshest landscapes in America. All of it built on certainty, not hope. Certainty that the gold would last, that the ore ran deeper than anyone could measure, that prosperity once lit could not simply go dark. But Rhyolite reveals something uncomfortable. Boomtowns are not built on gold alone. They are built on belief. And belief is far more fragile than stone. The richest oxidized ore made the town possible, but speculation made it explode. More than 80 mining companies incorporated during the rush. Stocks traded faster than truth could verify them. Promotions promised veins that did not exist. Money flowed not just toward what was real, but toward what people wanted to be real. And when the ore thinned, when capital tightened after financial panics, when deeper mining demanded patience instead of speed, belief cracked. Banks failed. Newspapers folded. Railroads withdrew. Electricity went dark. Not because the desert attacked the town, but because confidence left it. Rhyolite did not die from violence. It died from disillusionment. That is why the ruins feel different from cities destroyed by war or disaster. Nothing here was taken suddenly. It was abandoned gradually, thoughtfully, almost politely. Families packed their lives into wagons. Buildings were dismantled and moved to towns with better futures. Even lumber refused to stay loyal. What remains are the things too heavy to carry away. Vault walls, concrete cells, steel-reinforced schools, bottle houses made from discarded glass, the bones of permanence, without the life that justified building them. And maybe that is why people still come, not just for history, not just for photography, but for recognition. Because Rhyolite is not only about a gold rush in Nevada, it is about every moment in human history where ambition outran reality. Every city built too fast, every market inflated by confidence, every dream that mistook momentum for immortality. Standing here, you realize how quickly certainty can evaporate. 4 years to rise from nothing. To railroads, banks, opera houses, electric lights, then just a few more, to silence. The desert did not rush the process. It simply waited, and it is still waiting now. Wind moves through the cook bank, building the same way it did after the last banker left. Sunlight passes through the bottle house the same way it did after. Tom Kelly walked away. Shadows stretch across empty foundations, where water once flowed at $2 to $5 a barrel. Time continues, unbothered. Rhyolite remains frozen at the exact moment belief collapsed. Not rebuilt, not erased, preserved as a warning wrapped in beauty. So when visitors walk its streets today, when cameras click, when footsteps echo where thousands once moved, they are not just looking at a ghost town. They are looking at the physical shape of optimism, at what happens when humanity believes something will last forever, and builds accordingly. The wind moves again through broken windows, through doorways without doors, through staircases leading nowhere. And if you listen closely, it almost sounds like the town is still finishing its sentence, still trying to explain how something so certain became so silent. And maybe the real question isn't about gold, or mining, or even Rhyolite itself. Maybe the question is about us, because places like this don't just disappear into the desert. They hold up a mirror, a town built in 4 explosive years, railroads laid, banks raised, schools opened for generations that never came, all of it fueled by belief that tomorrow would always be bigger than today. So standing here now, in the wind, in the silence, in the remains of certainty turned to dust, you have to wonder, if you had lived then, if you had walked those electric-lit streets in 1908, if you had seen the trains arriving, the stock prices rising, the city expanding faster than logic, would you have believed it would last forever too? Or would you have seen the cracks forming beneath the surface? And maybe that question doesn't belong to the past at all. Maybe it belongs to every dream we build today, every boom we trust, every promise we assume is permanent. So before you leave this story behind, ask yourself, how many modern Rhyolites exist right now, rising fast, shining bright, convinced they are immune to silence? And when belief finally fades, what will remain? If this story stayed with you, if the silence of this town made you think a little deeper, stay with the channel, because there are more places like this, more forgotten cities, more abandoned dreams, More history still echoing in the wind when waiting to be heard.